Okay, so this is the video for homework 1B. So if you're looking at the course grid, obviously each time I record this is going to be slightly different. And obviously my internet's going to be slow when I'm making a recording because that's just Murphy's Law. But your homework 1B is due in between 1A and homework 2. And what has happened when I've taught this class in the past is that as we switch between this data file or something similar, your generated data file, where I've labeled group X, Y, T, and S, we transfer all that knowledge onto your chosen data set. The students often have trouble figuring out which variables go where when they're reading the instructions. So this is going to hopefully put those problems completely to rest. So what we're going to do is take the word group X, Y, T, and S and prepend them to some variables in your chosen data set. So let me just do a walkthrough, since one of the things you have to do is choose a data set. So let's do that. Come on, Canvas. Am I going to have to pause this video? Apparently so. Okay, so here we are in the shell. And if you go over to discussions, this is where you have to tell me what you want as your data set. So this is what it will look like to you. I'm going to leave student view, but I just have extra garbage on my screen that you don't have. So you go over here to your discussion, and I'm going to do a reply and say AERCAS school, that's California schools, will be used for demo purposes. So I'm claiming it for myself. Okay, and then I'm going to post this reply, and then everybody will see that. So I'm actually picking one that's not on the list. So here's the list, and you get to choose anything from this list. If you want to go off list, then you need to talk to me. But if you're just going to use anything off of this list, that's fine. So you pick one. You can just pick it randomly, or you can pick it with some intent. I don't actually care. So you decide. And then you're going to go over here to get your data. And I'm actually going to do this now. So the point is, you need something that has enough substance. It has enough categorical variables and numerical variables to make this work out for this course. And so I'm picking one, the CA schools, California test scores. And if you notice, there's a doc file associated with each data set, and it explains where the data come from. And you're going to need some of this information in your write-up. Also explaining, what the various columns are meaning. Okay, so just to get started, you don't need to know that, but you will need to know that when you go to do your write-up. Okay, now I'm going to go into StatCrunch, and I'm going to load it. And you should pick a delimiter as comma. And usually there's column names. So I've just loaded in my data. And I mean, this, if you get this column, you can delete this. This is not useful. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick some numerical variables and rename them. So for example, read, I'm going to rename as X_read. Math is going to be Y_math. So this is so I know that when I'm doing the next homework, I'm going to use read as my X numerical variable and math as my Y numerical variable. And I need to find some groups and some other categorical variables. So let me see. I actually want to warn you, don't use something like school or anything here in this column, anything that isn't duplicated. Do not use what's called a keyword. So keywords identify which observation you're looking at, and they are not variables. Okay, so keywords are not variables. So that's part of the reason why we're doing this, is to make sure everything's cool before we move on. I'm going to use county as my group. So I'm going to group as going to rename it group underscore county. And I'm noticing that grades either go KK08 or KK06, so that seems like a pretty good binary variable. So I'm going to use that as C1 grades. And I need another categorical variable, and I don't see any here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one, and lunch tells me what percentage of the kids get free or reduced meals. So I'm going to make some kind of cutoff. Let me see, graph, maybe histogram. I want to see how many students get free or reduced lunch, and maybe I want to just make this the cutoff, that many. So if it's 80% or more, this is 58 rows out of how many? Not that many, right? So because there's a whole bunch of non-highlighted rows. So I'm going to just say if that's 80 or higher, that's going to be another binary variable. So I'm going to say data compute expression, and I'm going to say lunch is greater than or equal to 80, and I'm going to call it farms. Okay, and I have to remember that I'm going to say something in my write-up about where I got the farms variable, but I'm going to rename it anyway, C2 underscore, or C2 underscore farms. Okay, so now I have an X and a Y and a C1 and C2, or you could name it like, I'm sorry, I meant to name it T. I was going to call it C. I want to keep this consistent with what we did in the other assignment, right? So I want my categorical variables to be S, T, and group, and if I have the option to have a binary variable, it makes it easier to just make it S and T, but it's totally fine if S and T have 3 or 4 groups. You just don't want S and T to have like 10 groups, or it's going to get unwieldy. So between 2 and 4 categories for S and T, and your actual group can be larger. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to save off this file. So here's how you change the name, my data, and you're going to just get rid of this error message, ignore it. It's because Pearson is attempting to save the data to your Pearson account, but if you're not logged on to Pearson, you can't, obviously. But you can go ahead and change this untitled so it's titled. Then you can say data, export, and just whatever's default. Now you can just do that. If you don't want to change this, it could say my untitled, and then you would just go to wherever you downloaded it and change the name right there. Okay, so now you have your data set, and now for homework 1B, you're going to run through all the same things you did with homework 1A. Now, maybe you're going to say to me, hey, what if I don't love my choices for X, Y, S, T in group? Fine. In between homework submissions, you're welcome to change them out. And honestly, if you really detest your data set, you come to me in office hours and we can negotiate switching to a different data set. That's fine too. But for the purposes of each data, for each assignment, you're going to label these columns so I know which column you're using as your group and which ones you're using as X, Y, S, and T. And then the instructions that I give you, some of the videos will have X, Y, S, and T in group in them, and then that will help you follow along with your data. Okay, so let me just do a couple just to demonstrate. Okay, so I can do graph, scatter plot, X versus Y, and go ahead and compute that. And then I could say, well, I want to group by, I mean, I don't have to group by group. I could group by my binary variables too. Like I can just group by these 2 classes. There's 2 groups of schools. That's fine. But usually we're going to group by group. It might make a mess on the screen. That's okay. Sometimes you can change the colors around if you want. It may not make a difference. And you can overlay polynomial of order 1. And wow, okay, so like this one here, it probably, because there's probably not that much data there, I'm guessing usually these are going to be positively correlated. All right, so you can also change this. You can say where group county is equal Alameda, for example, if you wanted to see what's going on with that. Or you want just one county. You can do multiple counties this way too. If you want to just put one county at a time on your graph, we can just have fun with that. Okay, but anyway, that should get you started. Then you can do things like what? Our chi-squared. Let's see, stat. I forgot that we use tables. Stat tables contingency with data, and let's see, we want let's see, we want T grades versus S farms, and let's see what happens. Okay, so for example, we're having fun with this. Okay, you guys can play with this, but you just go through all the same instructions that you did with the original assignment. Recoding doesn't necessarily make sense, so just do it as an exercise, just to prove that you can do it. So for example, I just created farm, so why would I recode it? I don't know, but I'm going to just do it anyway. Data, compute, expression. I'm going to do S farms So this seems very silly, but I just recoded the same true false into another true false. But let's say I wanted to recode something that isn't already true false into true false. So I could say data compute expression. I could say T grades is equal to KK-06 and label is KK-06. It's going to be true or false, hopefully. But for example, if I look at line, is it 10? There we go. Line 10, KK-06 is true. There we go. All right, so it really worked. Okay, and now we can go about our merry way. So I think that's pretty much all I need to show you. If you run into any problems, let me know. I will be looking forward to your submissions.